It's Elon Musk and the Orgy Squirrels 3, Part 3, the end of the trilogy. And you will be narrated by your host, Joe Fisher, and his extremely humble, quiet guest host, Kapil Amarasinghe.
Oh God, I lost it. I was so on there.
You were pretty close. So you've got a couple cats in the house, don't you?
Yeah,
Where are they right now?
probably like running and hiding.
You also have a missus in the house. Where's the missus? You're like
She is
running, hiding.
currently out of the house, so she's doing a little weekend trip with her friends, and
Nice,
yeah, yeah.
nice.
I think
All right,
the
so what am I talking about? Let me get to it.
you are supposed to be battling cosmic orgy squirrels from Mars sent by Elon Musk. I will describe my
Okay.
excellent adventure, which in part consists of yesterday. Um, yeah, I think we need a recap since this is a trilogy.
Okay, I kind of want you to do the recap. I'll fill in. Okay, you do like the shitty clickbait news article, recap, and then I'll fill it in. And there's been a lot of evolution in that story, so
Okay,
this will be interesting.
okay. Hear me out. The recap, and to really feel the full details, you got to watch part 1 and 2 of this. So you got to backtrack. But short story is Elon Musk genetically engineered orgy flying squirrels on the planet of Mars, which he's been constructing a secret moon slash Mars base on for a long time, using a carbon tethered elevator to transport the genetic specimens of, I don't know, evil, slimy, semeny, flying squirrely goodness from Mars to the moon. And then from the moon, he shall transport it to the planet Earth. And from planet Earth, they will take root. In fact, they did take root in your attic. At which
My
point they
attic.
began to multiply and form a menace greater than the gremlins, greater than, oh, the critters.
Oh
Greater.
wow,
Yeah.
critters. Oof, that scared me as a child.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
Even
real
Gremlins.
throwback. Yeah.
Gremlins was scary as a child too.
Yeah. So awesome, though. Anyway, the short of it is you were in the middle of the fight for your life against the Orgy Squirrels, and then you decided to bail. So you skipped state and visited some friends, and then some stuff didn't go quite to plan. And then you came
Correct.
back, recharged nonetheless, with a sword and a shield, ready to stomp some squirrel ass or whatever it is you guys do when you have flying squirrel invasions. Go on.
Yeah, it's funny. So I used to think that flying squirrels were kind of like this exotic creature, but they're very common actually, especially in the forests of like the northeastern United States. And they're not endangered. They're not even like they're just basically they're about as common as mice. They don't fly, but they kind of glide, and they can glide really far. By the way, I've seen them glide what looks like you know, got like 50 feet horizontally, from tree to tree. It's pretty impressive, pretty impressive actually. Um, anyway, yeah. So I had what sounded like a flying squirrel orgy infestation. They basically turned my attic into a sex bunker, and I thought that the work trip I took was going to utterly mean that my house was going to be forfeit. A brand new house, it's not very big, but I built it myself and quite protective of the little house that I built by myself. And yet it's turning into this like sex orgy bunker. What will be the remains of my home when I return from this 2 week work trip? A couple of friends in the area offered to come and go and like smack brooms on the ceiling and climb up on my roof and put bright lights in the attic because apparently that helps. All several people offered to do such things. No one did it. And so I expected to come back to my house being forfeit and there just being kind of like drunken inebriated squirrels laying around the yard because they orgied so hard they're just like sleeping in a coma. What happened though, which was really strange, was I got back and there was no squirrels anywhere. And I don't really know why that happened. It's almost as if they invaded my home and then very quickly realized my home sucked. Um, Really strange, really strange. But you see, shortly after I got back from my trip and I didn't see any more orgy squirrels, the orgy of burbs, or birds as normal people call them, but I call them burbs. The burb orgy, which is might be a Jeff Bezos concoction. Well, yeah, probably, because birds aren't real. So it's either like a three-letter government agency or it's Jeff Bezos. Anyway,
You saying Jeff Bezos is the good guy in all of this? He engineered Burbs to get rid of Elon's flying squirrels.
no, I think it's like a shadow war between the two. And Elon was smart, and Elon used like relatively intelligent flying, not flying but gliding. I think they rodents. And Bezos is like capitalizing on burbs not being real because they're all robots. And but the thing is that I'm pretty sure flying squirrels are diurnal. No, they're nocturnal entirely. I don't know. Anyway, they don't get to battle very often because they can only battle on the peripheries of dawn and dusk. But now my home is being besieged in every nook, cranny, and thumb-sized piece of trim on the outside of my house, which is all wood, by the way, um, is now becoming home to 4 or 5 different burb nests. And I went to go move a couple of them 2 days ago, and there's already eggs in them. The little bastards built nests in like a week. There's eggs in them, and now I can't move them.
Is that like a
So
law thing, or are you just being nice?
I'm being nice because I feel bad, because if I move the nests, um, you know, I've moved burb nests before. However, you everyone says you can move it as long as you put it somewhere close so that the way they can see it, and if it's in a decent spot, they'll reassume nesting. However, in my experience, this never goes particularly well because burbs can't carry an egg no matter how small it is. So if they don't like what you've done, they're stuck and they'll usually abandon the nest. When you move a bird's nest, you also probably won't do nearly as good of a job of keeping it stable and not protected as the birds would do. So if you go to move a bird's nest, unless you're moving the nest like 1 or 2 feet, or like a meter maybe, and you're giving it pretty much the exact same level of care and protection that birds gave it when they built it, maybe they'll use it. But too many times I've had to move nests, for friends or, whoever, or even on my own houses. I move a nest, I think it's in a really obvious spot, and the birds either abandon it outright and never even, they look at it and then they just fly away and they're gone. Or, a big gust of wind comes and it blows over and the eggs crack on your porch and then you cry. So I'm leaving the burb nests alone.
Okay, that's actually quite noble and honourable of you, allowing life to
Well, I
live.
mean,
It's
it's it's
self-sacrifice.
t- it's tough because the burbs are not particularly good housemates, and so they're going to shat all over everything. And bird shat on raw wood will actually stain the wood.
Oh,
So I'm kind of choosing to allow my house to get. Did you ever see? I think it was the Hobbit trilogy. What Pendergast, who
I
had the birds.
cannot, I just cannot remember the Hobbit trilogy. I can remember the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Of course, because those are good movies.
Yes.
Um, um, yeah. Anyway, there was another gray wizard who had a bunch of birds living in his head, in his hair, and so they shit all over his face, which is how my house is going to look. Um, but see, it's not just that though. So if Bezos is the burbs and Musk is the orgy squirrels, who is the frogs and toads? Because I'm being besieged by land, sea, and air. And now I love toads. Toads are my amphibious brethren of the wood. And now that the weather's warm here, all the forest toads have waken up. And this might sound crazy, but toads can live to be, older than most people think. And there's 2 or 3 toads that hang out on my porch because the little bit of interior light draws bugs to the windows and to the door glass. And the toads are very opportunistic and they sit there and they eat the bugs that are, trying to get inside the house. and I've named them. And two of the three that live on my porch every single night were here last year. They're just a tiny bit bigger, and you can totally tell that you can totally tell that they're the same ones from last year by comparing pictures. And so I'm developing a multi-year relationship with these like little forest tanks that eat bugs. But who's behind the toads is the $1 million question.
Right. I don't know. I just feel like you've got like a series of blights or a curse, perhaps. Sounds like this is like the Book of Revelations playing out, or some sort of Old Testament vibe going here. You're just getting swamped with various creatures that seem to take a
Oh, it's
liking.
endless. It's endless. Okay, it gets even crazier than this. Okay, so I live in the woods. It's not really that. I mean, yeah, it's remote. It's not that remote. I've got a neighbor. I got a neighbor 50 meters away on one side, and I've got another neighbor 100 meters away on the other side. And there's probably 30 or 40 houses on this road that I'm on. However, it's bordered by forests in all direction, and there's no agriculture, and there's very few roads in the area. And so I was visited by a bear about 4 days ago, and the mama bear had two cubs, and she got within about 30 meters of me, and twice actually. And I shined the flashlight, and I, watched them looking at me, and I was looking at them, and I was pretty close to my house, so I wasn't that worried. And there was also a little ravine with a stream between us. So I knew it would be like a little bit, annoying if they wanted to cross the stream to get over to me. But I just kind of stared at them, and they, looked at me and walked away. And then like 30 minutes later, I heard a loud twig snap, and it was the same bears from a slightly different direction approaching my house, probably because I was taking out compost and things like that. And they were about 10 meters closer than they were the first time. And then I shined the light on them again, and I actually said, "What are you guys doing? Get the hell out of here." And they very slowly walked backwards up the hill and then went away. Um, so yeah, I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff going on out here.
It
So who's behind the
sounds
bears? So toads and bears, who's behind them?
okay. So let me put everything together. Firstly, I think the orgy squirrels actually evolved into birds in your house.
Mm.
I don't know how Elon Musk did it. I don't know what technology he's been working on. Maybe it is a collaboration with Jeff Bezos. Because, they're a bunch of billionaires. Yeah, they have a friendly rivalry, but sometimes they get together and make love or whatever. Who knows? Anyway, they plan things, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe this is a great threat that all of the species of New Hampshire, all the animal and insect species and various things have realized, and they've decided, yeah, we're going to come together. We're going to form a fellowship of the ring at Joe's house.
Oh my
And
god.
from there, we shall march forward. We'll pick up Greta Thunberg on the way, and then we'll fight climate change somehow. I don't know quite how, but your house has gotten involved in it. Your house is sort of like the equivalent of that. Where is it? The Elven Forest or the Dwarven thing?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Rivendell.
Rivendell, that's it. Your house has become Rivendell.
It's
And
kind of funny because during the spring the rains create all these like little streams across the property. And so most of the places, when I'm hiking around the property, I just hear the sound of like streams and water. And then before the leaves were fully on the trees, the sun would kind of come through the forest and create that kind of red orange glow. And you'd hear running water, and you see the trees rustling. It kind of very much was reminiscent of Rivendell.
okay, wow. I mean, that just sounds lovely. In spite of all of the issues you are dealing with, animal related. Not that I'd really consider them issues, more like kind of annoyances or intermittent disturbances to the flow of your daily life. How would you describe them? How do you feel?
Well, the thing is I feel like this is their forest, and they're seemingly relatively peacefully permitting me to, occupy a corner of it. And so I'm trying to leave the entire rest of it completely untouched. And the toads have completely accepted me as a member of the family, because they really like them damn bugs. And by the way, toads um can live up to be 30 years old. 30 years for a toad. It's kind of hard to believe. I mean, they say the average is like, 10 or 15 years, but they can be 30 years old. That's kind of hard to believe. Um, Man, yeah, life in the forest is different. Just things move on a completely different time scale. And yeah, no, it's. I think everyone likes me. The bears are fine. My neighbor told me a fun story. I think about the same bear several years ago. Um, my neighbor would wake up and in the early morning would be cooking breakfast, and they had a vent that in the kitchen that would take the cooking smell out outside the house and kind of throw it into the woods. And my neighbor said that while cooking breakfast, particularly if they were making eggs and bacon, that he heard a sound outside and he saw the mama bear sitting on his porch. Now, when I say sitting on the porch, I'm talking a second floor deck. Like mama bear had to go up a flight of stairs on a deck outdoors and sit to look inside the patio door into the kitchen, smelling the air, watching him as he was cooking breakfast. He said this happened so often, he installed a curtain on the door because, and I quote, he put a curtain on the door, and I quote, "I don't like when people watch me when I'm cooking."
Even bears.
Now, can you imagine 7 feet from you while you're cooking, there's a 300-pound bear like looking longingly through the glass door at like you flipping, the pan?
Did he like just give some of the ham to the bear? I would totally throw some of that ham.
No, no, you can't. See, if you do that, though, what happens is that they'll start to expect it, and then that's when problems can happen. And so
Ah,
around here, they have a phrase which is pretty tragic. The phrase is "a fed bear is a dead bear," is what they say. And
oh,
so you can't do it ever, not once, ever. And so but if you know if they never get what they want, which is food. And see, here's the thing, like they're not at all intimidated by people. Like the bear that saw me, hell, if I wasn't shining a light in its face, I think it just would have approached, all the way to the point where I got uncomfortable and went inside. They're not, these animals are not, they don't care. Like you're a thing that they don't they're like agnostic. They don't know if you're a threat. And so they don't treat you as if you are a threat. They just kind of treat you with like a cautious indifference. And so long as the bear smelled bacon, several times in a row and sat on a porch and didn't get anything out of it, next time this bear will smell bacon, it'll just probably keep going up the hill looking for acorns, right? So you
okay.
can't feed them. And trash is a big deal too, because if you have trash that has food waste in it, you got to really be careful with that, because you don't want the bears to become accustomed to getting into trash. That's not quite as bad as you feeding them, I guess, but it's still really bad, because then they'll start going in people's trash cans. And if they do that enough, someone might, have them removed. So, yeah, so my neighbors all have like little, this might sound funny. My neighbors all have like kind of like either take out their trash, and remove it, to the trash place, as they make it, or they have these like little sheds that are locked, kind of armored, like little like pill boxes for
Okay.
food, for food waste, so bears can't get it. But here's the funny thing, because I don't eat any animal products and I also compost my food, they don't like my trash. So there's literally nothing in my trash that they give a shit about. And so one or two times I've seen like, my trash messed with, molested a little bit. Nothing was taken, no mess was made. I think that they get into my trash and they go, "This is bullshit."
Well, can you
Where's
just
the
tell me one thing, right? Okay, get it. I love it. This is bullshit.
Yeah.
But just tell me, because for anyone who doesn't do this, how do you compost your trash? Like, what's the steps there?
Oh, well, so, I try to minimize trash as much as humanly possible, but I still produce probably, let me think. So I don't know what,
I mean, this is useful for anyone planning to go live in the woods. This is a good, like, learning opportunity here.
so, okay. So two things. One, I'm not sure what size trash bags you have, and I don't even like trash bags. Trash bags are kind of crazy. Like we buy plastic bags to put our plastic pollution in, so that they go into a big place where where humans temporarily store plastic pollution. It's just so weird, right? That we even
How long
like
does that
do
stuff
it.
take to like just degrade down? Does it?
It doesn't
Ugh.
really, because the moment that those trash bags and those plastic bags full of trash get buried, they're denied access to UV light, and it could be thousands of years before they break
Oh,
down.
so you're basically saying, so this is what I figure in like thousands of years' time when humanity finally goes extinct and gets replaced by orgy squirrels that Elon Musk has genetically been engineering on Mars, who will then subsequently become the dominant race. They will
Definitely.
eventually build little squirrel constructing units and little squirrel diggers. And while they're digging away, they'll just find really, really kind of foul smelling plastic wrappers and packaging. And it will, like, say Twinkies on it in America. Is that right?
Yeah, so it's funny. People assume a landfill or like a garbage dump is where we put things to get rid of it.
Oh, the
But what they
ocean.
don't, yeah, or it used to be the, well, it still is the ocean for a lot of people in the world, sadly. But what we've really done is we're just temporarily storing it there. We're putting all this trash in a big pile and we're covering it up just to keep it for later, because at some point somehow there's going to be a need for that stuff, because we will no longer live in an ever expanding world of like ever expanding energy, which we're on the precipice of cresting over now. And we're going to we're going to need what's in those landfills, and we'll be pulling it back out, and it's going to be a really horrible messy job. But yeah, no, so I probably produce 1 cubic meter of actual trash every 2 or 3 weeks, which I consider to be a massive amount. But it's mostly because I'm still building my house, and I just have trash. Like I can't help it. Like if I
Hold
buy,
on, I need to take a step back. Right, when are we running out of plastics and why?
it's not that we're running out of plastics, which is we'll be running out of all these other like base constituents. Like for example, um, if okay, man, we are dangerous in this conversation.
Open the can.
I okay. Oh God. So when I was really young, like inconvenient truth times, I used to believe in peak oil. Okay, um, and peak oil is like a popular term bandied around to mean the time in which humanity realizes they've used 50% or more of all the fossil fuels on the planet, right? And so it would mean it was the beginning of the decline of fossil fuel energy that humans can use, right? So when I was much younger, I probably believed some alarmist propaganda about peak oil. Now I've really done a deep dive. In fact, since the week and a half since we've talked, I decided to learn about fossil fuel manufacturing and fractionation and all that kind of crap, because I'm an idiot and I seem to be a data sadist. And I've learned that it's really complicated. And not only is it really complicated, I no longer believe in peak oil, but I believe in something that's perhaps more sinister. And what I mean by peak oil, I mean the total amount of the billion years that organic material has been compressed into coal or some kind of a crude oil that's in the ground. Um, all that stuff. I don't think we're ever going to use half of it. I don't think we're going to get close to ever using half of it, because there's just simply so much of it, because we had a billion years of creating it. However, I've learned just how little of that material is really useful. Okay. So for example, there's even, you've probably heard of what they call tar sands.
No, tell me more.
So tar sands are, I think that they exist in multiple places on the planet, but one of the biggest tar sands deposits is in Canada. And basically, it's just, imagine, it's one of the most horrific things you've ever seen. If you just go on your computer right now and type in tar sands, like tar sands, and go to images, you'll see. Okay, imagine just a big multi kilometer pit where they're just digging up like dirt, and the dirt is full of tar. Okay, and they have to boil the
This looks
tar.
like Mordor.
Yes, it's Mordor. It's literally
Actually
horrific.
looks like the depictions of Mordor in Lord of the Rings. You guys should Google search this.
Yeah,
Wow.
tar sands. Okay,
It sounds like
and
Tarzan, but it's not. It's actually terrifying.
yes,
Not that
it's
Tarzan isn't terrifying, but tar sands are genuinely a lot more terrifying to look at. They look like decrepit
yes.
lands. Wow.
So understand that these tar sands mines, they're massive, and there's several of them, and there's different names for the formation. And anyway, these
Some of
actually
them
exist
do
in
look
several.
eerily beautiful. If you're into like really dark gothic looking stuff, some of this looks great. Yeah, go.
Yeah. So tar sands are basically it's near surface level tar that is bound up in soil or sand or clay. And if you look at some of these pictures, they got these trucks and they got these big machines, and they're just scooping up the dirt right off the ground. They're loading it into trucks, and the trucks drive over to a facility where they use a bunch of heat. They use usually a bunch of natural gas, or they're burning tar from the tar sands. And tar sands take an incredible amount of energy just to get the tar out of the sand, right? So tar sands are very inefficient, right? Like, I don't know the actual breakdown, which I probably should know because I didn't spend much time focusing on tar sands, but it sometimes it actually takes more energy. Like, you have to burn more fossil fuels to get the tar out of the tar sands and like process it than you get from the tar sand than you get from the tar sand itself, which
Okay.
sounds insane, because how could it be worth doing if you use more energy than you get out? Well, that's just what we do, because it's entirely possible that the products they can make from the rendered tar they get from the tar sand is more valuable than the natural gas that went into it, even though from a standpoint of total energy, calories of energy, you put more in to get the tar out. So, like, for example, like in 1940 and 1950 with agriculture all over the world, how it typically worked was you were getting either 1 to 1 or 1 to 2. So you were getting either the same amount of food in calories or like kilojoules out of the agricultural land as you were putting into it in like diesel fuel or effort. But now we're at -10 to 1. So now we put in 10 times the energy, typically in fossil fuel based fertilizers and chemicals and nutrients, and we only get 1 unit of food out, which is absolutely horrifying, and it's horrifying. So anyway, um, we live in like in a weird world where it's oftentimes cost effective or profitable to put far more energy that can never be replaced. Like, the when they're burning the natural gas to get the tar out so they can make more plastics or whatever, and they make a little bit of a profit on that natural gas, which I don't love, but it does burn a lot cleaner than coal or like kerosene. Instead of using that
I
natural
mean,
gas.
what you're saying is that inflation's inevitable
Oh,
in
it's
this
yeah,
model.
exactly.
Like,
Yes,
yeah, carry on. No,
100%.
you.
Um, and this is the kind of rabbit hole that I've been going down, and it's been kind of terrifying me. And so, and so, tar sands were actually not really. I could be totally wrong. I'm just talking out my ass here, but I'm pretty sure there have been times in the last 10 or 15 years where the tar sands kind of shut down because the cost of fuel and alternatives to the tar sands lowered to the point where the tar sand was no longer profitable to extract. I'm sure they're extracting the hell out of it now. But so what I mean, so even the tar sands, that's literally tar and oil on the surface of the earth. But because it's dirty and it's hard to get and it's contaminated with all this crap, it's not just clean black oil coming out of the ground like it does from the bottom of the seafloor. Because the tar sand's hard to get, it's really bad. It's not an efficient source of energy, and it only is profitable when the cost of energy is high and the cost of fossil fuels are high. So anyway, I used to think that peak oil would mean We used half of all that exists, and now we're in a constant state of decline until we tech ourselves out of like the energy decline with fusion energy and thorium reactors or whatever. Now I actually think that the plurality of fossil fuel energy that exists in the planet will always remain there, because we're never going to use it, because it's either too hard to get through any known conceivable means, whether it's buried many kilometers deep, or like the tar sands, the fossil fuel compounds or molecules are so dispersed into another medium. It's just garbage, right? So we're when now that I've learned about how it works, now I've learned a little bit about how it's taken humanity, over 100 years, like 130 years or so, to actually figure out how to really utilize all the different combinations and all the different blends and fractions of crude oil that comes out of the ground. And now that I know that all crude oil in the world is different, so the oil you pump out of the ground in Texas is very different from the oil you pump out of the ground in Venezuela or in Russia or in Ukraine, or anywhere. They're all very different because they're comprised of compound. They're comprised of carbon that is at various states of age. Some of it could be 100 million years old, some of it could be 40 million years old. So the age of it is different. And also, is it from ocean sediment? Is it 2 kilometers of ocean life compressed into like a very fine, very thin, easy to suck out oil? Or is it like a really low quality coal, that's from, old, peat bogs that got, covered over by glaciers and then, whatever. Right. So little of the fossil fuel on the planet is really good anyway. It's not, we don't have the technology. And if we did, it would be too cost prohibitive to use the material, because it would take so much energy just to make whatever this garbage fossil fuel is useful to us. We're never going to use it. So I don't believe in peak oil anymore. I think that there's going to be tons of fossil fuels in the earth forever. However, I do believe in what I would call peak usable fossil fuels. And I actually think we've crested that hill years ago, like many years ago, maybe a decade ago. And so whether or not we use half or more of all the fossil fuels is irrelevant if only 10 or 15% of all the available fossil fuels on the planet are actually usable in the first place through reasonable means and reasonable, cost versus benefit analysis. So we're in a really weird spot where the cost of putting 10 times as much energy into a field than you get out in corn or grain or rice is quickly going to come to an end. And so yeah, so we're a really good podcast that I like quite a bit. They said something really interesting that really stuck with me. They said, throughout our entire natural lives, you and me, and even the person doing the podcast, which is like double our age, they said throughout the entirety of our natural lives, we've assumed that this constant state of constant growth, this constant state of ever increasing energy and ever increasing profit, ever increasing economic growth, ever increasing debt. We've grown up in this world of basic, not for everyone, but for most of humanity, we've literally lived our entire lives on this 60 to 90 degree slope of constant growth and constant energy consumption. And to us, that stairway to heaven of just forever prosperity feels like flat ground. So we have been constantly growing and constantly succeeding and constantly consuming more energy and more profit and more payroll, more everything. And to us, that's normal. To us, that is flat. That is our norm. And I don't think we're ready for what's going to happen when we're declining and that becomes the normal. and it's going to change. It's going to change all of human civilization. And I don't know if it's going to happen this year or in a decade, but it's going to happen sometime because I actually think it's happening now. Now that I've really dug into it, and so yeah, just think about that for a minute. Anyone listening, just think about that. This constant state of constant growth, constant infinite growth on just a linear, you know, 8% per year or whatever we've had for our entire lives. To us, that is normal. To us, that is flat ground. We're just walking across a parking lot, no resistance. You know, there is resistance, but there's not, because most of humanity is on this constant ascent of additional, you know, prosperity due to almost a one-to-one ratio of fossil fuel consumption. And that is getting ready to stop. And so we're going to no longer be climbing. We might plateau at best, but I think we're going to experience an energy decline. And that is going to be really weird. And as a species, we're going to have to learn how to adapt. And I think that's starting now. And so, yeah. And then I'll let you respond to that, and then I'll circle back to trash and composting.
No, well, I actually wanted to ask what makes you think that's starting now?
Oh God. So, okay. You said open the can. So I got the top screwed off.
You are the keeper, you are Sauron, and all of the creatures of the forest shall converge on your home and try to conquer it. You are the outsider, the man, the human, that threatens their very existence. And I am here to support you in your era of conquest. Now, open the can!
The can is open. Okay. So everyone is listening on your web browser. Go to Google, I guess, and type in "our world in data primary energy." I'm going to do this right now and make sure this works. And
Just
I've known about this.
Again. Repeat that again. Type in primary.
Our world in data primary energy.
End data, primary energy.
Yeah, my top link says global direct primary energy consumption, our world in data.
Okay, are you on Google? Oh, I've got primary energy consumption by source, our world in data.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And tell me if the first thing that happens, the big chart shows up.
It's big charts of South Africa, China, India, US, Brazil, coal, oil. It's a breakdown.
That's a little different than mine. Let's see here.
Tell me what your one's called. Got energy, environment, and yeah.
Global direct primary energy consumption is what the chart that I've got. Global direct primary energy consumption.
Oh yeah, I see it.
Okay. So this is.
Oh, whoa, okay. That's insane. Just from 2000 alone to 2020. That's insane.
So two things. First, I'm sorry. I'm actually sorry. Okay. Secondly, this is total energy. Okay. So you hear, this is total energy. When I say energy, I mean energy. And almost all of this comes in the form of heat. One way or another, almost everything is heat. And so you can see how, like, for example, traditional biomass at the bottom, that means burning dung, cow shit, or wood for fuel. Okay. And interestingly enough, it stayed almost constant for the last 220 years. Fascinating, right? And okay, so now you hear things that sound really good. You hear things like Germany has supplied 6% of its summer peak load from wind and solar, or something like that, right? You hear these things, right? I hear these articles all the time. In fact, for a time, for the last 10 years of my life, I actually felt really good. I felt good. I felt like, hey, we're on track. Like if we keep producing renewables, we're on track. We're putting so many of them out. I drive by huge solar farms, before I moved up to the woods, and there's windmills going up. And when you drive across America, you drive, between, the West Coast and the East Coast, the middle of the country where it's all flat, there's a lot of windmills out there. You'll see thousands of windmills, and they're so big, you feel like an ant running around, among like a giant forest of these like bladed trees. Okay. It's really quite stunning. However, all of that, wind and solar infrastructure that you see, if you look at this chart, I'm on a 4K monitor and I've got this chart full screen. This chart is full
I want to
screen.
just interject. I'm on a
Yes.
65-inch TV on a 4K, on a 64-inch 4K TV, and I'm having to. Hang on, let me see.
Yes.
I've had to zoom in. I've had to zoom in almost 250% just to see the total percentage that's actually used by renewables.
Yes.
Like it's tiny. It must be at the absolute most of global energy consumption 5%, probably 3 or 2. Looking at this,
Yeah. So oh God,
not even 5%. Not even 5%.
I
Not
think
by a long way.
on my screen, I don't really. So hydropower is a renewable, but I'm not going to include that in my number because hydropower is very hard to do, and you do create a tremendous amount of habitat destruction to make it happen. So let's just say solar, wind, and other renewables.
Yeah, no, if we exclude hydropower, basically solar, wind, other renewables, and modern biofuels are probably less than 0.5%
Correct.
global energy consumption looking
Correct.
at this. And I
Now,
am literally zooming in to 50% on a 65-inch TV at 4K. This
Yeah.
is crazy.
So this is the state of the world right now. Okay. And so all of the prosperity, so you can see 1950, something happened in 1950. In 1950, things really, really, really started taking off. And this isn't even a linear chart of growth and prosperity. This is a parabolic chart of growth and prosperity.
Is this a long
And
shot?
yeah.
No.
I mean, it looks like a parabolic curve getting ready to take off. That's
Yeah, this
only
is a
being
parabolic linear chart. Yeah.
Now remember, I mean, I'm telling you, this is crazy. I wasn't alive during the like the 70s oil crisis, oil embargoes. But I was alive during the 2008, 2009 recession. Look at how severe the 2008 recession was in this chart. Look at it created what I would call barely a pimple on the skyward, barely a pimple on the skyward surge, right? Towards forever infinite energy consumption. Okay.
I would say maybe it caused a less than 0.5% drop.
Correct. For like a year and a half. Okay.
Yeah.
So, my God. So when I say fossil fuels, I'm talking gas, oil, coal. Okay. Which comprise 84% of all of our energy consumption or something, and that's total energy. No one cares about the people burning biomass. You know what I mean? Like no one's talking about those people. Those are the poor people that live near me with wood stoves, and those are, more traditional societies or agrarian societies that are, burning the dung to heat their homes and cook their food, that kind of thing. We've already excluded those people from our, our visual periphery anyway. So coal, oil, gas. Now, I don't think I can find a quick chart to explain this next point, but suffice to say that this surge of coal, oil, and gas, which we've been consuming just hand over fist as fast as we can get out of the ground to fuel everything, to fuel second homes and fancy cars and cell phones, whatever, right? All this So if you look real close on this chart, you see since like the year 2000 to like 2019 on this chart, see how there was kind of like it's particularly in oil, but especially gas, mostly due to the American shale, shale gas and shale oil drilling. See how there's this like surge of like additional energy, like a little like shot of adrenaline of like real easy energy that kind of helps kick this chart even more upward, right? Kind of see how that happens starting about 2000. Okay. So that that um that surge of quick and easy, cheap, accessible fossil fuels was basically, I can, I'm going to call it the the what happens before the death rattle. So if you're dying but you don't know you're dying and you're in that euphoric state, what is that?
I mean, delirium would. I mean, if you're dying and you definitely wait, hang on. Yeah, I would go with probably delirium,
Okay.
like a very advanced delirium.
Okay.
Or
So
I don't know. I've got a different term, peri-arrest, but you're
sure.
generally not really aware if you're peri-arrest or you are, but you're not. Yeah,
Yeah.
delirium.
Okay. So delirium combined with euphoria,
Yeah.
right? Like you're basically in like a 20-year orgasm. Okay. Um, and that begins right as we pull out of the 2009 recession. It like really takes off. But basically, starting in the year 2000, um, you know, I'm looking at the chart here. We added from the year 2000. Looks like we added 25,000 terawatt hours of additional energy to the world. Okay. From the year 2000 until just now, only 22 years, we've added, 25,000 terawatts of additional energy, which the entire world did not consume 25 terawatts of energy until about 1950. Okay. So the entire, so from 1800 to 1950, 150-year time period, the world was consuming less than 25 terawatts of energy. We added that much additional energy to the 100 terawatts we were consuming in the year 2000 until now, right?
Most of which has come from coal, oil, and gas.
Yes. Okay. The reason why that surge of just that orgasmic 22-year surge of cheap energy. Now I know it's funny because people complained about $2 a gallon gasoline. You pay a lot more of it where you are, blah blah blah. But that was cheap. People cannot comprehend how cheap those prices really were, and those prices were cheap due to this delirium gasm of cheap energy, and this cheap energy that surged on this graph was predicated on a tremendous amount, multi tens of billions of dollars, maybe hundreds of billions of dollars on some years worth of reinvestment, government subsidy, and investment and profits driven by the fossil fuel industry. Okay. So 40, 60, 80, 100 billion dollars per year was spent globally for decades. Okay. For decades to subsidize or prepay or give loans to the fossil fuel industry so they can spend billions of dollars building new technology to get oil. They can spend billions of dollars with, $500,000, weird, prospecting ships looking for new deposits on the ocean floor 2 kilometers deep, and building new refineries and building new ships that can haul, the compressed natural gas or compressed petroleum gas or crude oil or whatever. Okay. So we spent trillions of dollars in the last, 30 or 40 years to make more fossil fuels come out of the ground faster and cheaper. Okay. But guess what happened starting around, the early 2000s that has increased? The amount of government subsidy, grant, and investment has gone down by 5 to 8x. The amount of private investment, pension funds, hedge funds, or whoever that was speculating or just outright investing in these in contracts to subsidize these fossil fuel companies to go out and continue finding more oil to pump and more coal to dig. That has all dried up. And, my numbers are just me shooting off the hip, but my understanding is that just in the United States alone, at the peak of fossil fuel investment, we were looking at like $40 to $60 billion per year. And now my understanding is that is less than 10, maybe like less than 7 or 8. And so what that means is that this delirium gasm of growth happened because we just spent the easy proceeds of 30 years worth of really, really expensive, really, really productive investment, and we didn't reinvest. For the past 15 years, we have not reinvested. We've reinvested, 10 or 20% when it used to be 100%. Okay, into maintaining this growth. Okay, and so everyone basically cashed out. Like I don't want to say everyone cashed out, but what I mean is we didn't reinvest, and it's too late now. Okay, it's too late. It's been too late for a decade. It's been too late.
We didn't reinvest into renewables or
Well, so a smart civilization that was aware of, a smart civilization with smart leaders would have recognized that we were going to come to the end of cheap, usable fossil fuels at some point, and to have taken that excess energy, taken that additional 20% energy that we produced just in the last 20 years, and used that to heavily subsidize the very slow multi-decade process of weaning us into more electrification, for example.
yeah, but we're run by
didn't.
sociopaths. Literally, the world is
Correct.
basically run by mostly sociopaths.
Correct.
Who are very short term and don't care about the future.
So we didn't do it, and we didn't reinvest. And even when the cost of fuel to heat our homes this winter and the cost of fuel to drive our cars goes up 2 times higher than it is right now, because it's going to happen. It's inevitable at this point. Well, it depends. It depends on how much demand destruction is created as the prices go up, which will be tremendous. However, it's going to take a lot of demand destruction, and demand destruction is a very polite term for saying tremendous recession, depression, and global catastrophe. Okay. Because our entire society has lived on this chart of ever increasing prosperity and wealth for all. I mean, obviously not everyone gets to benefit, but for those that, for the 2 or 3 billion people that live in this energy sphere, it's been constant growth, constant quality of life increase since 1900, constant, right? Punctuated by some disasters and, and horrible, brutal dictators, et cetera, right? So the takeaway here is that renewables cannot save us. They never could. They can't save us. They can't even come close. The renewables can't even make it from the break room where they're eating like a McDonald's Big Mac. They can't even make it from the break room where they're eating McDonald's Big Mac and shuffle down the hallway fast enough to even put iodine on the surgical instruments that you need to stop my sucking chest wound.
So, quick pause. Now, I just want to pause you because I totally feel you on that. But do you think that's because there simply just wasn't sufficient investment into renewable technology over a 30, 40, 50, 60-year period when there should have been? Or do you think there's another reason?
I'm actually going to say no. I'm going to say no to your question. And this has been a really interesting and lucid realization for me in the past. This is like a 10-year realization for me in the making, but it's really kind of metastasized. I don't like using that term. In the last 6-8 months. But I actually think as a society and a culture, I think we've been doing okay with renewables. What I mean by okay, there's still tremendous subsidies to buy an electric car. Tremendous subsidies in many places. Okay. Like, the Massachusetts, the state just south of me, they waive all excise tax if you buy an electric car. Okay. That could be $5,000 of tax rebate on you buying a brand new electric car that you would pay if it was a gasoline car. Okay. There's still a tremendous amount of incentives for the transition to renewables. And we have been building a lot of renewables. My understanding now is that what I thought was a good job was not even keeping with the Joneses. What I thought was a good job, and seeing solar and wind go up and seeing the cost of solar panels go from $3 a watt, 10 years ago to 20 cents a watt today, right? I thought this was amazing. I thought, wow, like if things get bad, we've got the technology. Well, we don't. We don't actually have the technology. And what I mean by that is that, yes, we're making a lot. We're making a lot of advancements, and even in like really turbulent political climates, and even with everything being garbage, politics and all this kind of stuff, for the most part, most countries that are relatively prosperous are actually investing in renewables. The problem is that if you look at the chart, so look at this chart right now. Go back to the chart, and you can see coal. You can see coal started taking off, pretty heavily around about 1850. Now, look how big of a section of this chart coal takes up. So, for example,
It's about 35%.
correct. And so in 1900, coal was basically the only energy source of any real import. Look how many years it took for oil to catch up with coal as an
Oh
energy
yeah,
transition.
it took about 70 years. Oh, well, yeah,
Yes.
no. I mean, 30 to 20 to 7, 20 to 70, there's an argument. But in order for oil to
Yes.
outclipse a coal, it took from 1950, if we use that as a benchmark. I mean, in 1950, oil was maybe half of coal. By 1982, oh yeah, actually, let's say no. By 1965, oil. So 15 years. It took 15 years before oil was equivalent to coal, and then it subsequently outpaced it.
So and that's from when oil was 40 to 50% of the Earth's production. If you go back to when oil was new, it'd be 1900, right? So when oil was clearly the better energy source than coal for almost all purposes, and when oil already was about half the world's energy consumption, it took 15 to 20 years for oil to make up the other 50% of the gap and then overtake, right?
So just this is weirdly enough what I think. I kind of see your conclusion here. To actually build the infrastructure and the incentives and everything else required to deploy renewables globally to take up a significant chunk of global energy usage, I mean, it's going to take time. It takes a decade at least, I think. It took if you look at that chart now, just to even get that tiny, it took a concerted effort from 2009. You can see that they really put a lot of effort into renewables to kind of
Yep.
pick up the amount, the usage. And again, most of that's hydropower, but
Yep.
yeah, I see exactly what you're getting at. It's going to take 10,
So
15, 20, 30 years. And by that time, well, we'll have a period where we may have to have a significant cutback on the amount of energy we use as a species.
Well, yes. So that's happening no matter what we do. But so you see how the total renewable basket, if you include hydropower, how it has that big surge, like you said, like around 2010, 2013. I'm just talking off the hip. I'm not an expert in this. I think that was the Yangtze River Dam project in China, that giant hydro dam where they flooded so much land to build that giant, one of the world's biggest mega projects. I think a huge quantity of that renewable boost, if you count hydro as renewable in the renewable basket, is from one mega project in China. And so that wouldn't even be there. That hydro slice would be half as thick if it wasn't for that one mega project, which a lot of people don't love because I don't know how many people it displaced, but I think it was in the millions if you factor in like the Yangtze River Dam project, Yangtze River Dam. Let me look this up. It's amazing. So think about how granular this is. Think about it's like I'm pretty sure one single piece of infrastructure. Yangtze Three Gorges Dam.
Really fascinating that you're talking about this subject because it's been on my mind a lot of late. So I keep going. So, for example, all right, let me explain. So I don't know if you know this, but Sri Lanka as a country is broke. They went bankrupt. They defaulted on all of their loans. They've run out of foreign exchange reserves. They're having to ration fuel. They're expecting a food crisis in the next 3 months, possible famines if they don't act fast, etc., etc.
It's unavoidable.
Worth reading headlines on this and worth understanding why. Totally different topic. Save it for another day. But one thing I was asking, one of the big problems is that they're utterly dependent on fuel, as in on fuel imports, specifically oil or fossil fuels. And it's bizarre because firstly, as a country, they have tons and tons of natural resources, literally everywhere. They also have their own oil and gas deposits, like on the northeast. So they shouldn't technically have to import anything if they built their infrastructure right. And another caveat to this is they have vast tracts of land. There are large areas of desert, for example, 12 hours a day of intense 30 to 40 degree sunshine.
Yeah.
So these areas are just ideal for solar power. The whole country is ideal for just literally being self-reliant on solar and tidal. It's perfect. But the simple truth is the Sri Lankan energy. I only found this out after I spoke to I met this. He's a Sri Lankan priest. See what So the other caveat to Sri Lankan society is the Buddhist culture is the dominant religion there, and the Sri Lankan monasteries, which represent the Buddhist faith, they actually hold significant cultural sway, as well as to some extent a degree of political sway as well.
Interesting.
They're like a lobby. They can exert a form of lobbying, but they're also aware of what's going on within the country. So I spoke to this Sri Lankan priest, and he was telling me the Sri Lankan Energy Board was outright refusing for 10, 20 years to just purchase or promote the use of renewables, in particular solar, because their members were getting kickbacks from the fossil fuel industry. So this entirely renewable, self-sustaining, free, in the long run would have been free or much more efficient, economically efficient form of energy, which would have made them as a country less reliant. And if they invested in the infrastructure 10, 20 years ago to have this as a widespread network, if they'd done this, when COVID-19 hit, they lost large amounts of their income from tourism. They had to shut down a lot of their agriculture and industry. They lost a lot of revenue that came from foreign remittances because a lot of their workers had to return. There was a few other things going on as well. There's a lot of aspects to this, but they could have really lessened the hit on their economy if they'd had adequate renewable energy producing solutions in place. And they're the perfect nation to. But because of corruption, that's never actually got off the ground. And as long as any form of government that's using the current system exists, I don't believe it will, which is why I formed the view that any endeavor in that country needs to be done through the private sector, or we need a decentralized governance model, which is utterly transparent to remove all of the corruption that's inherent.
It's funny that you say that because I think corruption happens in many, many, many different forms.
So many.
And I would even say that well-meaning governments are corrupt. What I mean by corrupt is that the leaders perhaps don't understand these like most basic of fundamentals of the language with which they are uh, like God, this is so complicated. Like, I believe that most leaders, for example, some of the leaders on your neck of the pond, okay, have decided to add to pass a weird windfall tax on the fossil fuel industry. Okay. They think that the fossil fuel industry is just socking away 500 times, 500x profits or whatever, because fuel prices are so high, not because there's a real actual global market that is self-regulating with the occasional little corruption pushing by some cabal of oil producing countries or whatever, right? It's a global market, and the price floats. The price floats, right? When there's low oil in reserves all around the world, which we're at some of the lowest points in some places we've ever had, and there's not that much production coming online, and due to global strife and problems in the world, production is taken offline, or when some countries voluntarily refuse to accept oil or fossil fuels from one country or another for various reasons, it causes ripples in the market and the price goes up, right? Now, do I think oil companies make a ton of money? Yeah. Do I think some of it is ill-gotten gains? Yeah. But guess what? If you pass a windfall tax and you start taking away the profits, you have now interdicted the free market process, and the oil company now has less money for reinvestment. Guess what? You're literally like putting poison on the field that you're going to eat from 2 years from now, right? So this is a weird situation. Like I can't believe I'm finding
There's a
myself.
caveat to that windfall tax, how it was implemented.
Oh
They
no, explain.
basically they introduced a tax incentive. So I don't want to promote misinformation here. So this is simply what I've read and what I've come to understand is the caveat is provided those who are receiving this windfall tax, they can actually get out of it by reinvesting money back into British fossil fuels.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that, because when I just heard the phrase windfall tax, I immediately shuddered, because that would be biting the hand that feeds you, basically. And now that I understand the energy situation of the planet much more than I did, um, I just I'm in such a weird spot, dude, because I'm a fucking flower child. Okay, like I want renewables now. I don't like fossil fuels. I believe there's an abject global crisis that is happening by putting trillions of like cubic tons of carbon back into the atmosphere the earth has been happily living without for centuries and millennia and millions of years. Okay, i think that we're messing with a complex system that we don't understand, and I'm very open to my worst paranoias being proven wrong by global greening and by knowing that there have been 2 or 3 times more carbon in the Earth's atmosphere multiple times in the Earth's history, etc. However, I think that during this relatively stable period, humanity has been allowed to flourish, and just like what we think is flat ground to us, like what we think is normal resistance, is actually this like crazy skyward moonshot ascent of prosperity, but we think it's flat. I also think that humanity having what would appear to be a Earth coming out of a minor ice age, things are super chill. What could be the late bombardment, or what could be a runaway, like a runaway greenhouse situation or something like that. That's happened multiple times. What we think is flat is actually also a like really prosperous time, and I don't know what's going to happen. Like I just don't. I'm very heartened to know that there are more trees in the United States now than there was 150 years ago. I'm really heartened to see that there's lots of good things happening, but there's also a lot of bad things happening, and I'm in a weird situation where I don't want to defend the fossil fuel industry. But at the end of the day, they're just an industry, and they're companies seeking profit, and they're going to try to provide what customers will pay for. And I think to find more profit, they'll be to seek more profit, they will be continually trying to provide at a cheapest possible price products that customers will pay for. And when government jumps in and starts monkeying with the wrenches, I don't think that's going to have positive outcome. And so now that I simply understand that, like, renewables will not save us, nuclear is not going to save us. What I mean by not going to save us, they're not going to save us quickly, right? If right now, today, it was a wartime effort to tech out of this like incoming energy crisis, which I think is inevitable. If basically if significant percentages, I'm talking 5-10% of the G20 GDP immediately, 10%, dude, that I can't even comprehend that kind of wealth and power. If 10% of the G20 GDP went immediately to the production of renewables and modern nuclear reactors to tech out of this like energy crisis, here's the problem. Before any meaningful amount of that infrastructure comes online, it's how many years in the future? 5, 8, 10?
Realistically,
Especially for nukes. Especially for nukes. I mean, I think the average time to build a nuke is 8 years. And I mean, and that's 8 years for the old ones that we built in the past. To build a new one with modern everything, with like the modern safety, I have no idea how long it'll take. And so
it is typically 10 to 15 years.
Yes.
10 is fast.
So 10 is fast. So there we go. So we're in a right kerfuffle. Okay. And the war in Ukraine and all the political machinations, the lack of reinvestment, da 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 da. So this chart is going to look very different when this chart gets updated with 2020, 2021, 2022 numbers. We might even see a straight up plateau of total growth, which has hardly happened. And then we're going to see a decline. And I cannot comprehend how the decline is not inevitable now that I have just the most basic information.
Start now. So just FYI, I worked it out. I was spending £240 a month on electric. It's combined.
That's a lot.
It is. It's not gas and electric. It's just electric.
My gosh. Okay.
Is 550. In October, that will go up. Expected to go up another 50%. So I'm actually projecting for £700 to £800 a month spend just on electricity for our house. That's we're a 3-bed duplex. This is okay. It's not the most energy efficient setup, but
oh my gosh,
it's insane.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I think I pay a lot for electricity. I pay $100 a month. And that includes some amount of air conditioning.
Okay. So I'm going to be telling my wife to wear sweaters, a lot of sweaters, and so will I. Because it's just insane. It's actually forcing me to think really carefully. Like I'm not going to be using the tumble dryer for a start. It's all those. It's weird how you raise the price of something and it suddenly makes you pay attention to every little thing.
Yes, and so this is called demand destruction, right? And this is what I believe policymakers and governments are there. This is what they want, right? Like you can't. I don't know what's going on in the world. I don't know if it's lizard people. I don't know if it's just ineptitude. I don't know if it's just short-term ill-gotten gains. I have no idea. But what I do know is that a 5-year-old will understand that you can't build a sandcastle unless you put sand in the sandbox. Okay. And so we have not been putting any sand in the sandbox for a long time, or very little sand, but yet we still expect to have a giant sandcastle. And so I have no other conclusion. And with countries in the EU now planning to turn off 90% of Russian oil through the pipelines, it's like this is the thinning. Like this is it. Like your idea of like a crazy conspiracy theorist, stereotypical prepper person that's like the end is nigh. No. Those people this time got it right, because this is it. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like we're now that I know what's going on, Is it going to take 5 years? Is it going to take 5 years for the realization of an energetic decline of available energy?
I reckon it'll be approximately 12 months in the UK. I reckon.
And
Because
yeah,
let me interject here.
yes,
I just told you that I anticipate my electric bill, which 6 months ago, well, 6, 7 months ago was 220, 240 a month. I anticipate by October of this year will rise to about 700 to 800 a month. Now, I am reasonably, as you know, as everyone who may listen to this knows, I'm reasonably well off. I cannot say the same about the vast majority of my
yes,
colleagues in my profession who are doctors. They are not as financially resilient, especially non-EM doctors. There are a lot of doctors who don't have the degree of financial resiliency that I do. That's one thing. And actually, doctors are a well-paid group within the UK society. So then you start thinking about people who are not so well paid and not in such great positions. I think
yep,
already you're getting, there was a story, really good story. It was a few weeks ago. A 90-year-old granny riding the bus, repeatedly using her bus pass just to
yep,
stay away from her home so she wouldn't have to use heating so
yep.
that
I
she
know.
could stay warm.
I even heard that story. Correct.
And the Prime Minister's response was, "Oh, it's great how he gave you free bus passes to the elderly," which he didn't do that specifically, but missed
Yeah.
the point. Um, I think that sort of scenario is just going to precipitate and affect more and more and more people. Because when you have in the UK again, I think you've got massive liquidity restrictions on the economy at every level, affecting agriculture,
Yep.
technology, industry, science, finance. Everything except housing in the UK economy has been adversely affected, partly because of macro global stuff, as you said, the war between Ukraine and Russia. It's you're knocking off 40% of the world's grain,
Yeah. That's
significant
really bad.
disruptions to gas and oil, particularly gas, which is causing huge fluctuations in the price of gas. Um, and then on top of that, you've got these added liquidity restrictions and issues with movement of people and goods and basic services and exchange. So I think Britain's going to be a really difficult place to live, and it's already started. And I think one of the nice telltale signs of this, by the way, a really subtle one, is 12 months ago that there was a period when in the UK a tax called stamp duty had been temporarily lifted, removed for properties
Yep.
below a certain value. There was just a flurry of house buying. After that, there weren't that many houses on the market. Now, since electricity bills have gone up 100% in May, we start seeing some really nice properties showing up on the market. If you keep an eye, it's like, it's a nice
Interesting.
house. And I think
Starting already.
it's people who have second homes
Yep.
who are selling them just because they're not
Correct.
affordable.
Correct. It's happening here.
And I think that should be like an early telltale sign. If you're starting to see a lot of nice houses in a market, and that's the thing, if you suddenly start seeing the housing market flooding with lots of property, I mean, in the UK, it will get snapped up fairly quickly, but it's worrying, if that makes sense. If people can't afford their second houses, those are the most well off.
Yes.
And they're already taking preemptive measures. So
I'm glad that you said that because, what I just laid some heavy stuff out, and this is not my opinion, right? Like, I don't like, I mean, how do I say that exactly? So all I'm doing is regurgitating data that I've come to learn and come to understand. And my numbers will be skewed and weird and wrong, but I may be wrong on details, but I'm not confused about what's going on, right? So what's going on is that the cost of energy is going to continue increasing until people consume so much less energy that we reach an equilibrium. Will that mean now I don't want this to give people a false sense of security, especially people in Europe, because I'm really really worried about Europe. Actually, I'm way more worried about Europe than I am the United States. Um, what I mean by this is that, you know what, fuel, the cost of your electricity may actually go down in 3 years from what it is right now, or the cost of petrol might go down. But I cannot easily describe how different that world must look in order for that to happen. Okay. Like in order for your cost of electricity to be less in 3 years than it's going to be in this October, your cities will be very dark at nighttime. Streetlights may even go out. Streetlights will get all changed to these weird LEDs that only light up when someone walks underneath them. There's going to be clotheslines stringing between buildings, utility poles, everything, everywhere. People are going to have gardens everywhere, everywhere. Like if it can hold if it can hold more than a couple fistfuls of dirt, there's going to be something growing in it somewhere, everywhere. Okay. People are not going to go out. People are going to people are going to turn their breakers off in their house at like 7, 8 o'clock at night. People will eat very simple diets. Like, it's funny because I think that this transition could be an experience of learning and growth and community and a different kind of prosperity for the human spirit. And I think it will have to become that eventually, even if it's hard to get there, in order for us all to get there. But the time between right now and when it becomes those things, I think is going to be very turbulent, and people are going to be thrashing and lashing out against the lifestyle and the comforts that they're accustomed to. Right.
I mean,
And so
I so want to give you the examples. I mean, we're already seeing this stuff playing out, people lashing out.
it's
So, for
just starting.
example,
It's not
well,
even started. This is the
going to
tailgate party.
got hit and went bankrupt, fuel rationing, regular blackouts, prospect of famine. There's a period now, and again, talking to that priest was enlightening, not encouraging, enlightening, in that he was saying, at first those protest marches against the government, they'd have thousands of people, or hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people. They'd be large protests, and now the protests. Well, the government's changed. The president stepped down. The prime minister's stepped down. Yada yada. And now what's happened is they've got a new government, but the underlying fundamentals haven't changed, and people are hungry. So those protests are now
Yep.
50 people as opposed to hundreds of people or thousands of people. Because most of those people who aren't there, who were protesting, have gone off to grow food, gone off to figure out what to do. Because at the end of the day, as you said, as we strive towards a society of true efficiency at every individual level,
Yes, it's going to happen.
This is what we're going to need to survive this. Every single person. There comes a point where protesting against a higher power, you're effectively appealing to authority or appealing to a higher power to fix stuff. You can't do that sometimes. Sometimes you just have to fix stuff yourself.
Correct.
And I think, and I hope people get that we will have turbulent times. I anticipate civil unrest in the UK in 12 months.
It's going to happen. It's going to
I think
happen everywhere.
There's a high probability event. I don't want it, but I would not be surprised, and I expect it. That's my personal view.
There's okay.
Following that, I think people will have to then reflect and go,
yes,
what can we build here to support ourselves on an individual level? Because no one is backing us up. If they don't do that, they die.
Wow. Okay. I basically agree with everything you just said. So, okay. You and me are good friends because we both have an overactive imagination. And no, I don't believe in an overactive imagination necessarily. I think it's a good thing. But knowing what I know now, so it's funny. I'm somewhere between black pilled and white pilled on this, because if I put on my robot brain, everything, if I put on my robot brain and really try to distance myself from the human experience of suffering and turmoil, What's going to happen is probably good for humanity in the super long term. We're going to become a very different species that looks at what they're doing and what they're consuming very differently in the next like 10 or 20 years than we do right now, which I think is kind of inevitable if we're going to make it, whatever make it means to you. However, it's what's really sad here is that I think, okay, I'm kind of, I'm a little bit optimistic here. I don't know. I feel like I'm a freaking techno optimist. So, so I was having a discussion with one of my friends about some of this stuff last night, which is probably why I'm so amped up now. I also drink 80 milligrams of caffeine, which is not that much, but to me it's a lot. So, okay. I actually think this may go better than I fear. What I mean by this may go, I mean the next 36 months of being alive on planet Earth. I think it might go better than we think. I do expect everything you said to happen. I do think there's going to be some civil unrest. There's going to be food riots. There's going to be starvation. It's fucking horrible. And I'm like, my soul is like mourning. My soul has been mourning actually for months over what I think I'm aware of and what I think is going to happen.
Oh, dude,
And
I've spent every day for the last month being depressed about this stuff.
okay, yeah. So okay, I think that's a natural reaction, and I think that that's part of this whole process for every individual. Honestly, this is a really going to be a strange, tragic repeat of what happened with COVID. I went real hard, real early on what was going to happen to me personally, society, culture, the world I live in, in February of 2020. I knew what was going to happen. I mean, I got many details wrong, but the realization of a deep and unavoidable change was real. And I was grieving at that time, right? I'm now in a different type of grieving process where I am but just like in 2020, I was armed with a lot of data, a lot of facts, and I was actually still optimistic. I knew there was going to be bad, but I was optimistic because I saw a light at the end of the tunnel, even though it was very far away. Whereas I was early to it, right? I was very early to the grief and seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Many people I know didn't get to the grief until May, June, July of 2020, right? And then the light didn't show up for them until last year. Or 8 months ago, right? But I was very early in. I don't want to say out, but very early white light at the end of the tunnel, right? So I'm already there with this, and I think that okay, this is my take. This is what I'm going to call the golden path, and for which is a hilarious term with lots of meaning. The golden path for us, in my opinion, just as some armchair dumbass sitting in his little house that's unfinished with, birds nesting all over it. The golden path for us is to be shocked, hopefully not in a too negative way. And it's happened. The shock is coming to you, my friend. The shock is coming to Europe. Like, you're not shocked now. You will be shocked in October. You will be shocked in November. And especially if there's no viable, agreeable conclusion to what's happening in Ukraine, which I don't think there's going to be. I think that's a siege and a stalemate that will persist for quite a while.
I suspect. I don't know now, but I'm just going to say straight out. I think if this could easily go for another 2-3 years in my head.
Yes, correct. And now understand that 20% of the world's grain, wheat export comes from the areas that are currently shut down. And last year's grain harvest that needed to be put on ships and sold through the ports that are now occupied territory, or however you want to define it. I'm not trying to be political. The grain didn't leave. So there's nowhere to put the grain. So farmers in Ukraine are not planting. Some are, some aren't. I don't have any data. I just know that the export, 20% of the world's wheat export is currently stalled. Will eventually go bad, by the way. And 20 in our just-in-time economy, 20% is kind of cray-cray. Okay. And so
I
now,
just lay my sheer criticism that the reason we're at this point is because we've operated on a just-in-time economy
Yes.
for
Yes.
so long. And the only reason we got away with just-in-time because everything was good for so long. And when everything is good for too long, people forget that things aren't always going to be good.
Correct.
Mock the preppers and the people who are pro-resilient, let's call it, or pro look, shit could hit the fan. You know, you can call them paranoid, you can call them kooky, you could say yada yada. But at the end of the day, there is nothing wrong with building in self-sufficiency, self-sustainability, resilience into your architecture and business models.
Correct.
And just
agree.
in time is the fuck up of everything. We
Correct.
took it in whatever it was, the 70s, ran with it, actually before the 70s, and then we ran with it for far too long and assumed everything would be good forever. But it's not.
So here's a fun little example. So I'm switching mechanics from. I used to do most of my own mechanic work, but I'm trying not to. I'm trying to simplify my life. And so I had a big shop that was like, had like 10 mechanics in it. And I had a bad feeling from them. I felt like every single time I took my car in for the simplest thing, they found a way to spend $800 of my money. And I just didn't like the relationship. So there's a local guy. There's like a 63-year-old local mechanic that still works on cars amazingly. Has no apprentice, by the way. No one young wants to do this person's job. So local mechanic guy. So I'm switching to him, and I talked to him for 30 minutes a couple days ago while I was shopping, and I'm taking my car to him on Tuesday. And we were talking about just this. And he's a mechanic. He's a very small, he's a one person tiny mechanic shop that probably has 50 customers. Right. And he told me something that blew my freaking mind. He said, buy your consumables now for your vehicles. And I said, what does that mean? And he goes, buy 2 years worth of consumables. And I go, what's a consumable? And he goes, maybe it's a starter, brake pads, brake rotors, wiper blades. And I go, what? I go, dude, what? Like, what are you talking about? And he goes, no. He goes, you can't get the stuff anymore. And I go, what do you mean you can't get the stuff anymore? He said that he's got one of his longtime customers, and it's a woman, and she has a like 2016 Toyota RAV4. Now I don't know if you have the RAV4 model in Britain that we do here. I'm sure it's a different name, but it's a very popular compact SUV. Very popular. Okay, it's probably in the top. It's probably in the top 15 most popular vehicles in America. Okay, and so, and not only is it one of the most popular vehicles in America, they keep most of the parts the same as they change the model years, and they keep most of the parts the same across different models. Okay, so brake rotors. Okay, I think it was rotors. It was either rotors or caliper. I can't remember. Brake rotors for that car, a consumable part consumed equally with the consumption of tires. Okay. He said that he's been waiting 6 weeks to find them, and that this regular part you change every couple of years or every 3 years on every car. For one of the most popular cars in America. He said this rotor went from being out of stock, no ETA, to unavailable, meaning it's no longer orderable through his entire distribution chain. Okay. And that means that there's a car that you can't use. Someone's got a car that's a pretty decent car. It's not that old, probably has 100,000 miles on it, or, whatever. And it's not she can't use it. A woman who may have this be their only car, she can't use it. The brakes don't work, right? You can't use it. And there's currently no estimation on when it will be available again. It is simply not available for purchase inside the supply chain. And so, and with the additional lockdowns that happened in many of the most populous parts of China, and particularly some of the big industrial centers, the trickle of supply of some of these components and constituents and parts the trickle of supply could still be backstock that was made in 2018. Okay. That's just now being used up. and nothing has come through the pipe since 2020 when all the container ships quit coming to all the ports. Okay. And we haven't even come close to seeing the bottom of the 2-year-old supply chain wounds. Okay. Remember when that big giant container ship got stuck in the canal and for like 11 days or whatever, and it clogged up the freaking Panama Canal? Remember that? No, it was in Egypt. I can't remember which canal it was. So I heard, I did some research on that. I heard that was going to create a 5-year minimum length supply chain disruption, simply because just in time. Thanks a lot, just in time. Simply because there was a 12-day screw up in the flow of goods and services to the globe. Okay, 12-day screw up. Okay. We've had multi-month, multi-quarter, maybe we're approaching multi-year screw ups in some of our biggest industrial manufacturing centers of the world. And we don't know how that's going to play out. And that is a completely separate, separate crisis, so to speak, than the immediate decline of available energy for all humans to use. Right. And so this is all hitting
that's
at
actually
one time.
well, that's actually contributing to the rise in costs of goods, which is contributing to rising inflation, which
Correct.
means people are having a harder time living. And the funny thing is, you say because China continues to pursue zero COVID policy, like their cities are all in shutdown.
Yes.
So this ongoing economic supply, industrial supply chain issue, that's not stopped, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
So this gets, I mean, okay, think about how complicated what we're talking. I mean, this is an hour and a half now of like kind of building this big kind of awareness. I haven't even talked about tremendous labor shortages due to lack of people willing to enter physical building trades. I haven't talked about the potential drawdown of like the Japanese workforce as it continues aging with less young people. I haven't talked about what's going to happen in China with due to their one-child policy for how many decades, and how they're going to be likely facing a similar crises or series of crises that Japan was facing. I'm not saying China is going to be experiencing negative population growth, but you don't have to experience negative population growth to experience a tremendous lack of people to fill specific roles in your society, in specific
skill
jobs.
transfer, training, transition. When you lose your
Correct.
skills, you lose your industrial chain even further. It erodes. So then you worsen things more.
So there's a really crazy video I watched on YouTube a while ago, and it's just someone just runs around, I think somewhere in India with a video camera, and just films people on the street fixing things. It's really fascinating, actually. And for someone that has had to, whether I liked or not, fix a lot of my own stuff, I just was just almost intoxicated with watching these people, barefoot, bare hands, simple tools, fixing complicated machines. And when I'm watching these videos, there will be one, grizzled looking older, typically gentleman, winding copper wires around a starter, or crouching in the street, pounding sleeves out of an engine block. And there'll be 15 kids from 5 to 15, 5 to 18 years old, all huddled around, handing wrenches, watching, holding things, holding a valve tappet, or, using feeler gauges to figure out things like that. Okay, that is a transfer. That is a wealth transfer that's happening between multiple generations. It's more important than a wealth transfer. That knowledge being transferred from the expert to the novice, however you define that relationship, it isn't even money. It's money is like this like BS. That's like
money is just the tool to get that stuff.
Yeah.
Valuable. Yeah.
That stuff is primary wealth. That knowledge is primary wealth. The money is just this like secondary resource that may or may not exist. Okay. And so, those people in India, struggle as they may with the struggles they have in their society, the 15 children or the 8 youngsters that are watching this one expert do this work, they are the new brick and mortar in the foundation of the future society of their province or their district. Okay. What's happening in America is my mechanic is old, tired, burned out. He's 60 something. He's going to become my new mechanic. Okay. I am choosing to not fix my own vehicles because I just don't have the aptitude. I have to work on what I'm good at. And this mechanic has no apprentice. Okay. When this man dies, his knowledge dies with him. And the loss of that knowledge is incalculable. Incalculable. Okay. I've got a friend who lives in the Midwest, a registered master plumber, whatever that means. Okay. And this person is financially comfortable and stable because they have a job that you have to use by decree of the state. You must hire a master plumber to do certain plumbing jobs. And so this person has infinite job security, and the state mandates that they be employed by the constituency. So as inflation goes up and the cost of living goes up, they'll simply raise their prices. They're okay. He hasn't had an apprentice in 6 or 7 years. And the last several he had never made it. They never completed the apprenticeship.
So,
Okay?
so why was that, out of interest?
I don't know. I mean, I'm not just going to blame video games and computers because it's not that simple, right? Like it's a change in society has occurred in our countries, and I don't understand it. I don't fully understand what it is or what it means or what it implies. But for whatever reason, the late Gen Xers, which I'm included in.
Let me explain it because I think I understand.
Yes, please.
I made the 99.5% of my net worth was made off a single £10,000 purchase that I made in 2016.
Yeah.
That's it. And that net worth is what it would take me. Let me see. It would take me a minimum at my current salary of 12 years of full-time work to make that. As a doctor, as a professional, as a consultant, at a consultant salary of 100,000 a year, right? Okay. Actually, if you'd asked me this question 6 months ago, I would have said it would have taken 25 years.
Yeah.
Single trade, one trade. I think that explains it. If that to me says a lot.
Well, it does, but the question is what percentage of the population, which I think is a fraction of 1%, have experienced, that kind of fortune and exercise that kind of foresight.
I think it's weirdly enough the standard that it sets. So like, if you go into the world of finance, for example, absolute entry level, year one, 40, 50 grand, you do your 3 year.
Yeah.
If you make it to year 2 or year 3, you very quickly get to 100 grand. And then the more successful you become, everything starts just piling on in from there. That's finance. And that whole world is built on speculation. It's not really built on actual skills like being a master plumber or an engineer. Yeah.
It's not built on primary wealth.
On primary wealth. It's not built on primary wealth. None of the professions that offer huge amounts of secondary wealth, I'm not going to say exorbitant, but the professions that offer the most amounts of secondary wealth, i.e. the highest salaries, the highest bonuses, the best work incentives, the best of everything, they're all a lot of them are in speculative industries, in speculative finance.
Yes.
And to me, that sets an example to society as to what to aspire to. Either you're a degen gambling some crypto because you realize that speculative finance is where everyone's making their money, or you happen to train up and go into speculative finance because you decide of all the options available to you, you're a smart guy, but this probably offers the best balance. And I think it's that the narrative that sets, it's like, well, in the UK at the moment, we have various shortages in various industries that were filled by European working migrants, which aren't now.
Yep.
And they're just unfilled, but we still have unemployment. So to me, that says something about what people aspire to and what they want doesn't necessarily match with what the society needs. And that's a really dangerous place to be in as a society.
So 1 second, my mic is acting up a little bit. Let me adjust it. Test, test. Oh, there we go.
I mean, look, I can go on, but the thing is, I'm not the best example to mankind. I mean,
Yeah, me neither.
but
It's
seriously, yeah, I don't like knowing that this isn't like success guilt, by the way. This isn't me feeling guilty. I don't like the implications of knowing that the vast majority of my wealth was acquired through me being able to foresee things in advance. That's fundamentally what it was, through me being able to exert a power of oracle to a degree and to have a degree of luck on my side that other people didn't necessarily have. And I had a bunch of experiences that helped me to realize the opportunity that luck had afforded and understand how to interpret it and how to play it. That's how I kind of look at that singular trade, and everything followed from there. But the funny thing is, the more I look and understand the nature of finance and the nature of speculative trading, particularly leveraged trading and the interplay of leverage and speculation on the economy as a whole, I just feel like it's yes, it drives capital. It drives capitalism. It drives the mechanisms of capitalism are driven by this. People are encouraged to build things, but when to me, I feel like there's something called the PE ratio, and it's the price per share to the earnings of the company.
Yep.
And for a lot of companies over time, that PE ratio just kept going higher and higher and higher. And some of the largest companies in the world have really, really high PE ratios, which tells you that a large chunk of their valuation is built on speculation.
Yep.
And to me, that's just, well, you want to look at companies that probably have lower PE ratios because actually they're intrinsically more valuable compared to the ones that are maybe built on hype and on really good marketing and on the people behind those companies being able to market themselves and their brand and their company well. That's great because people do move in herds, especially in speculative markets.
Yes,
This herd mentality the whole way through. Don't ever let anyone tell you there's such a thing as an efficient market hypothesis. It's bullshit. That only works in very, very mature markets, and we're not in a mature market at this point for a lot of sectors. So yeah, sorry, I know I just went off on a tangent there, but I do feel like perhaps the aspirations that society has been set and has set itself has created some of those skill deficits you talk about, and then fundamentally that has an adverse impact long term.
So this is incredibly complicated. I would say that it's a slow death by a million cuts, and I think that the climb of the prices, the climbs and cost of living that often outstrips earning potential, has created a culture through 2.5 or at least 2 generations of Americans that have produced. There's people I know that I went to high school with that have never owned a home. They've all every time they moved to the cool town, the up and coming town, they thought they were going to save some money. They maybe put an offer on a house. They lost it. They didn't get the offer. The house sold. They decided to wait a year. They didn't find a house they wanted. Boom. Houses went up 30% in value. They're waiting another year. Houses went up 30% in value. Right. And the handful that did buy houses had their houses become worth half as much in 2008, 2009. That's what happened to me. And they feel scorned. Right. So these are last generation Gen Xers, first generation millennials. I don't really like those terms that much, but I understand they describe, coming of age in in different worlds with different aspects to that lifestyle. But I believe a culture has been created, and I think some of it has actually been pushed and promoted by some politicians, industry groups, lobbyists, to actually create a feeling of despair and hopelessness in the millennial generation in particular, about how I believe that a feeling of despair and hopelessness that I think is somewhat unfound, or at least is being exacerbated, and the flames are being fanned, specifically with which to use that demographic as a voting base. Just how I believe that politicians, perhaps a bit more on one side of the political compass in my country than the other side, but both sides for sure, use identity politics as political cudgels against each other and to rally their base against the others. I think that feelings of hopelessness and despair are weapons wielded just the same. I think that hopelessness and despair has been a major contributor to causing this generation, particularly millennials and young millennials, to feel that they were never going to be able to either buy their own home. And what I mean by homes are important, and a home is the primary asset owned by most people, I guess, in America. It's the one thing that you can kind of count on to beat inflation and beat the erosion of your financial like wealth and status and success in life, which is directly linked to your prosperity. And so not owning homes has created an entire not owning homes has denied a significant proportion of 1.5 to 2 generations of Americans in my country the feelings of responsibility, personal growth, and freedom of home ownership. That I believe has created a lifestyle of it, instead of just in time supply chain, it's just barely coasting, making it. Okay. And I believe the feeling of home ownership and adding on a garage to the house, or planting a hedge or planting a garden, has been replaced with Netflix shows, has been replaced with gaming, which I don't have a problem with. Right. It's been replaced with spending $120 a week at the pub with friends. It's been replaced with, probably not enough people are doing it, it's been replaced with, hiking all the time and being outdoors and playing sports. I love those things, right? I think all those things are actually good things too. It's just that there's the ability to join the property owning class, whatever you want to describe that, has become unaccessible or just it's inaccessible to a significant proportion of the younger people in my country. And so they've just created a different lifestyle. And I believe that this cultural shift has changed the values. It's changed it's just changed so much about their life. That's so many things. I think so many things are different about the world that the younger generations are living in. It's produced a massively lower amount of people that value or care to gain these skills, like the one my mechanic has, that when he retires in 5 years or 3 years or passes away, sadly, is not going to pass on, because the younger generations, a lot of them don't own cars or whatever, or they don't, whatever. That's just, for whatever reason, there's been a huge amount of lifestyle, economic, environmental, and like socio-political factors that have produced people that are more interested in degen trading on Robinhood than they are going and earning like fat money as a plumber or a mechanic or things like that. And I don't want to blame people. Like I don't believe in saying that the younger generations don't have
I really don't think you can, and I don't,
because it doesn't make sense, right? Like when I was very young, my father, I don't even like working that hard. I don't want to build my house. I don't want to fix my car, but inevitably I'll be pushed and pushed and pushed. I'll do it, and then when it's done, I'll think to myself, "Fuck yeah!" Like changing these brakes suck, but I did it. When I put the roof on my house, I was like, you know what? I put the roof on the house. That's pretty badass. Not by myself entirely, but largely by myself. Anyway, and when I was younger, so I grew up in a very, I don't want to say a poor, but like a middle class, small Midwestern town, in the middle of corn country. And about 20 to 30% of the population of my town during the summertime was actually migrant farm workers, predominantly from Mexico. And I remember I was getting a ride to high school with my dad in the car, and he was driving, and I might have been like a freshman in high school or something. And it was very early because I went to a consolidated school district, which is a horrible thing. And it was like a 40 minute drive, and school started like at 7 a.m. It's insane. Like, it's so much damage was done to teenagers that needed more sleep. And anyway, so it's probably like 6:15 a.m. in the morning. The sun's barely out, and we're driving past this field, and I forgot what they were doing. They were harvesting something, and there was like 50 people in the field. They probably were 100% migrant farm workers that were there for the harvest. And I think I'd never seen that many people in the field before. And they had these old buses they would drive around in. And there's like 4 buses on the edge of this road. We had to kind of drive around, and just the field was full of people, and they were busting their ass. They were just busting their ass. And I remember like seeing how many people were in the field harvesting, and I'm on my way to high school, and I just said something like, "Damn, they're busy." And I said, they're busy early or something like that. And my dad just said, he made like one simple comment. He just said something like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but the gist of it was, "That's real work." And he said it in this way that like, he just said it in this way that like stuck with me my whole life. Just like it's as if he looked at he was a mechanic at this time. And it's as if he looked at these other people in this toiling in this field, probably whom we couldn't even have a conversation with because they probably spoke virtually no English. Like, it's as if he felt pride simply being near those people doing that brutal work, right? At 6 a.m. in the morning, right? It's like he felt a kinship with the labor, right? And he respected them. And just this like 5 words he said, just, offhanded while we're driving down the road, like I heard a tone in his voice of like respect and appreciation. And, and I think I never like really looked at it that way, because that's when I realized, like in that moment on driving to school, that's when I realized that like, because I had worked pretty hard, I'd done some things up until that point, and I had done some work, nothing as hard as these workers were doing in this field for 12 hours a day. But I realized that like, I don't want to do that work because it's brutal. And that's when I like thought to myself, fuck, I gotta push myself, because I don't want to do that work. And when I realized I didn't want to do it, in that moment, I had an appreciation for people that do the work. Does that make sense? And so it's a crazy thing, right? And our societies are super complicated, and we need everybody, and everyone's important, right? Like, and everyone has a role to fulfill. And we, for whatever reason, have created a few generations, probably in the majority of whatever you want to call the West. We've created at least probably 2.5 generations of people that feel a huge disconnect from the world that I grew up in, and certainly the world that my late father grew up in. And they don't feel connected to it. They don't really have a desire to learn the skills that created that world. Maybe some of them, maybe most of us don't even recognize that the skills that created that world are still 90% the skills that are required to maintain the world. Right. Like, and so
I mean,
instead,
I suspect there's a good chunk. So let's see. I think I could point to lots of people, not that I know personally, but I think growing up, I think some of the places and institutions that I went to, some of the academic places I went to, I could easily identify people who really looked down on people who did that kind of work. And I think there's a lot of cultural and media examples of that as well. And I think there are a lot of people in power or in political power, who on some level fundamentally look down on such people or have been culturally conditioned to do so. And I think that's part of the problem. Hello? Joe, I have lost you.
Oh, no, sorry, my mic was muted. Because I sneezed. I agree with you. I agree with you. So yeah, gosh.
I mean, you were conditioned, and your dad intrinsically understood the value of that.
Oh yeah, I
And
know.
then you were
Yeah,
conditioned. And it's so interesting you said that. It's like, I don't want to do that work, but I kind of have to be able. Do you know what I mean? I get it.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly
yeah.
where
Oh,
you're coming from that.
and yeah.
No, I
Go
was
ahead.
going to say it's why, even though I can do some ridiculously high level complex medicine, you know, I'm an idiot when it comes to like, I don't know how to do I can't do basic gardening. I can't do basic mechanics. There's a surprising number of things, partly just because of the way I was raised, again, cultural conditioning, that I just never felt the need or desire to do, and actually things that I think any person should be able to do, really, if shit hit the fan.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to make of that. There's still stuff I've got to work and learn. So,
Well, so the thing is so it's funny. We have to tie the bow on about a dozen different conversations, and we're rapidly approaching like the 2 hour and 10 minute mark or something. This is definitely gonna have to probably carry over probably into the next episode for sure. But so I have so many mixed feelings about this. So many people need to learn how to become chimney sweeps. People need to figure out how to become mechanics. And, you know, we're facing a labor and skill crisis all over the world. In particular, in my country is really bad. Like, so I'm deeply worried about Europe and where you live in regards to short-term shocks to energy and cost of goods and services and inflation. But I am medium term mortified about the state of my country when the last of the farmers retire. I mean, I don't know what the age is in the United States. It's mind blowing. I'm looking up right now. Average age of farmer USA, 58 years old. The average age of a farmer in the United States is 58. And you know what the average life expectancy of a farmer is? Let's see.
is it
Life.
60?
It might be. Yeah, I think it's going to be like low 60s.
Let's see. I really do want to know.
Life expectancy.
Well, the 60s, I reckon.
Expectancy is 77, but that's not farmer.
Not bad.
That's not farmer. Let me go. I'm trying not to use Google for anything.
Life expectancy of farmers. You want to use DuckDuckGo?
Let's see here. Average life expectancy. The average age of all U.S. farm producers in 2017 was 57 and a half years, up 1.2 years from 2012, continuing a very long-term established trend of aging U.S. producer population. What's the life expectancy of the job? I don't think it's a whole lot older than mid 60s. Let's put it that way.
But what's the retirement age in the States?
I
mean, assuming people have like invested into pension plans and stuff.
Oh, this is funny. Retirement age of farmer USA. 65.
65, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. Okay, 65. More than half of the farmers are younger than 65. That's what they're saying. So, oh my gosh, that's terrifying, which means half are older. Oh no. Okay. Well, I'm going to buy some more rice.
I think this might actually, I know it sounds doomy and gloomy, but it might be like a fun time, an appropriate time to start wrapping this up, just because we've definitely had an orgy of topics. There's definitely been like a cosmic CD progression from CD. There's definitely been a cosmic CD progression from where we started off. which was neither of us really knowing what we were going to talk about today, to getting
Yeah.
onto this huge mega topic.
Yep.
And then, to be honest, like, I've had an excellent adventure today. I really
We didn't talk about hardly any of the things that we wanted to talk about. This is so
the
fun.
squirrels disappeared. Part three. It was literally a 3-second event. You eventually the squirrels disappeared, and then the birds took their place. And maybe the squirrels had mutated into birds. Maybe Jeff Bezos had sent birds to clear out the squirrels. But then bears showed up and toads, and it was awesome. But then we just wound up on this huge topic about macro inflation and supply chain issues and critiques of modern just-in-time economy, and literally everything. And literally everything. I feel like I'm going to tell you what I've been up to in so many short terms. We're in a crypto bear market. I don't know if that's going to end in a few months or not. I don't really care. I see that as virtual money. What I do, however, look at, and I will realize a portion of it when it reaches a certain value, and I remain bullish on cryptocurrencies overall. But I preface that with I have spent the vast, vast majority of my time picking up extra shifts. I don't know if when we last spoke, I think I've come close to doing like 16 night shifts in a month.
Oh my gosh.
In a 1 month period, I think I managed to clock in definitely 14 nights and then a bunch of extras on top as well.
Wow.
So I'm basically stockpiling as much physical fiat in anticipation of cost of living increases. And I've gotten to the point where I know where my tax bracket's going to hit roughly. And it's already approaching the top end for most people, at least when you factor in my new job. But what I'm trying to get at is, even with that, my intention is just to work and make more and more and more, because I don't know where this is going to go. And I think if you're smart, you're going to be looking at ways, A, to cut your costs of living, B, to save a ton of money, because your key costs, which are going to be food, electricity, and fuel, those are the 3 key costs. When people say, what is it in the UK? I think it's 9% inflation this year.
Yep.
Actually, well, that's as an average across all sectors. With food, it's 20%. With fuel, it's been like up by a third. With electricity, it's doubled. So actually, to me, when you look at the 3 most important things, they've already, overall, your cost of living is more than doubled. That's my view.
Okay, so this is something I feel like this is so doomy. Doomy doom. So understand that the prices that you're paying now, and everyone who's listening to this is, and food is up 30% or whatever, and fuel's up 300%. Understand those price increases were predicated on the almost imperceptible to us a year ago price increases of feedstocks, fuel stocks, transportation costs, things like that. The things that we didn't really notice a year ago have what have led to the inflation we're facing now. Now, with fuel having doubled in that time, we have in no way priced in the future increase and rise of the cost of those services. And it's already being baked in. Every second of every day that fuel remains as expensive as it is, it creates a compounding concentric radiating sphere of waves that are constantly massaging the cost of goods and services upwards, like little cilia. Imagine a little doom amoeba of expensive oil, sadness, and pain. That's little cilia are constantly just kind of massaging. They're constantly massaging the entire world around them that they infect into higher and higher prices, more and more scarcity. So we haven't seen it yet, right? So 2020 and the first half of 2021 are what priced in what we're suffering through now. Now, what we're going to suffer through this fall, winter, next year is what's being priced in now. And it's being priced in on a much more stark, aggressive, and doomy doom floor, right? So, like, I feel like we're going to end the show with me being like, buy food, learn skills, buy a clothesline and things like that. And I guess I don't want to do that because like the internet's full of those people, although maybe I should become one of them and, start like a, freaking
Do
Doom
you
cult or
reckon
something.
Netflix
But
needs to do a new season of Doomsday Preppers?
I don't like any of that stuff. I don't watch any of it because I just don't understand it. To me, preparing for a difficult time is learning new hobbies and new skills that like transitioning from to me, like preparing for this is like learning to appreciate looking for mushrooms in the forest and hiking and like being in nature instead of insert whatever expensive hobby you have, right? Like it's not really like it doesn't have to be like craziness. We're not going to be like all in the streets battling with like nail boards for rat meat. You know what I mean? We don't have to do that, like the world is amazing and beautiful and bountiful.
I mean,
And
if you guys want to do that, I will sit there and watch. Don't get me wrong.
and nail boards battling in the streets.
I will be the announcer. I will be like, ring the bell. Yeah, sorry.
So okay, how about this for next show? For the next show, I already have another call I have to get on, which I'm already late. So for next show, I guess let's just pontificate on this big can of worms that we opened, because this is important stuff. I care deeply about it. I'm worried about it, but I'm worried, but I'm trying not to stress, right? And I think that humanity can really grow and really benefit from this. And I feel like the pandy, I call it the pandy to try to make it cute, even though it was tragic. I think the pandy actually really created a lot of it really changed my society in ways where more people are interested in outdoor hobbies, and there's been a resurgence in some people wanting to learn skills and do stuff with their hands and find other ways to do things because they were denied their typical distractions. I mean, it's a drop in the bucket to what we need, but it did happen, right? And so I think that through this coming hardship, we can choose the easy path of evolution and change and growth. And I don't like the word spirituality, but we can learn to connect with each other on different levels in different ways. And it'll be like a righteous path, the golden path. Or we can fight in the street with nail boards over rat meat. And I'm hoping that we're not doing that. I think
a big fan of it, though. Big fan. Don't stop if you're going to do that.
Oh my gosh. So I want to watch Hot Shots Part 2 again sometime because it's one of my favorite movies. And this reminds me of the scene where the two people are getting ready to fight, and they're putting on like concession candy on their they dip their gauntlets into caramel, and then they're trying to figure out what weapon to choose, and they can't decide between like sprinkles and gummy bears. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with sprinkles or gummy bears. But I'm not okay with nail boards and Molotovs. So I'm sure we're going to get a little bit of that, but let's hope we don't get a lot of it. And I don't know. Like, yeah.
Tell you what, I'm going to sublimate what I've just said and watch seasons 1 to 3 of Lucha Underground, which is a great piece of pro
You talked
wrestling.
about that. You talked about that a couple months ago.
No, I talked about it at work as well. I think I went into like a 5-minute detour about this one match where they kept hitting each other over the heads with like, what was it? Those light beams, those industrial light beams.
Yeah.
The halogen beams. And then like one guy set the other guy on fire. It was just so awesome to watch. This is Pentagon Jr. versus Vampiro. It's like a 16-minute match. It's utterly brutal. Sorry, I just really like violence. Don't strip my DMC people. I just like well, like not real violence, but that kind of violence,
Yeah, of
kind of
course.
scripted kind that's got trained professionals, but
Of
kind of
course.
blurs the boundary with what real violence is. Anyway,
Of course. Um, that's so funny. Yeah. So I think we have to end it because we're like at 2 hours and 25 minutes or something bonkers right now. But I'm actually optimistic. I think it's going to be rough, but I'm optimistic. I would love to talk in the next show about things I'm personally doing to try to, increase my resilience. I do not consider myself a prepper. I actually I think the word has a really negative connotation. But I don't consider myself a prepper, but I do consider myself like someone who is observant and likes to yeah, it's just I don't know. It's complicated, but I don't think this has to be hard. And I think with a minimum amount of awareness, I think this doesn't have to be nearly as bad as a lot of people think it's going to be. And I think we'll all be better for it eventually. So yeah, like we should totally hit this again on the next episode. But with that, I think we have to wrap this up.
all right, Joe Fisher. As always, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, and I'll see you next time on another episode Super Dangerous Show. Good night.
Good night, everybody, and buy some rice.